Hey, we're on lesson 2 in our algebra books today. This one has several different parts to it. It's basically a review of geometry. It starts off talking a little bit about lines and angles. I'll cover that very quickly. There are two types of lines we can have. We can have parallel lines that run completely parallel, meaning they will never cross, no matter how far they go. Or, if they're not parallel, at some point they are going to cross. We say that they intersect in that case. So lines are going to be either parallel or intersecting. If they're not perfectly parallel, at some point, even if it's a million miles away, they are going to cross. They're going to intersect. Whenever we have intersecting lines, we have angles formed because of those intersecting lines. If the angle is less than a right angle, like this one right here, it is called an acute angle. You can remember that because it's a cute little angle. It's just smaller than 90 degrees. If it is more than a right angle, if it's more than 90 degrees, like this one right here, we call it an obtuse angle. Sometimes we insult people by calling them obtuse. I remember on the movie The Shawshank Redemption, he makes the warden very mad when he calls him obtuse. So think of that one as an insult. Obtuse is large. It's more than 90. The acute angle is small and cute. The cool thing with intersecting lines is they actually form pairs of angles. The two acute angles here, opposite from each other, they will actually be exactly the same measure. Same thing with the two obtuse angles opposite from each other. They will be exactly the same measure as well. It talks a little bit more about angles in the book. If you have lines that are perfectly perpendicular to one another, they form 90-degree angles. Those are also called right angles. Remember, obtuse is more than a right, acute is less than a right. A 90-degree angle is a right angle. It's exactly 90 degrees. It's basically a perfect corner. And usually, you show something is a right angle by drawing a little square in the corner like I just did. So if we have intersecting lines that intersect completely perpendicular, they actually form 4 90-degree angles. From that, you can see that a straight line is made up of 2 90-degree angles. Therefore, a straight line is 180 degrees. Sometimes it's called a straight angle because it is a straight line, 2 90s. Or, if you were to completely go around this thing, you would form a full circle, which is 4 90-degree angles, which is 360 degrees. So it's just a real quick review of angles. After that, it gives us a quick review of polygons as well. We'll take a minute and talk about them very briefly as well. Let's go ahead and take a look. Alright, so the next part in the book here, it talks about polygons. Polygons are just any type of closed shapes we work with. The simplest type of polygon is going to be made up of 3 sides and 3 angles, therefore it's called a triangle. We use them a lot in geometry. We're going to learn a little bit about them in the next part of the lesson here, but before we do, real quickly, other types of polygons. If we have a 4-sided polygon, we can call it a square or a rectangle, but anything with 4 sides is a quadrilateral. So we've got a triangle, then we have quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals can be squares, they can be rectangles, they can be other things, or we can move up from there. We can have a polygon with 5 sides, it's called a pentagon, and you can keep moving up. You can have as many sides as you want. But basically, all of them are polygons. The one we're going to use the most often is the triangle. So let's go ahead and look at a few things about triangles that you want to make sure that you know. If we go over to the next section, we can see a couple things about them. So let's look there also. Okay, so when we talk about triangles, there's a few different ways we can classify them. One way we can classify them is according to the angles inside of them. This triangle, and by the way, these are all badly drawn. You'll learn soon on these videos that I am a horrible artist. I can't draw simple shapes. That's why I teach math, okay? So I'm definitely not an artist. I'm not a poet, anything like that, but I can at least explain how these things work. So our first triangle, it has one right angle, one 90-degree angle in it. So it is a right triangle. It's classified according to its angle there. Those are very useful to work with. We'll learn more about them later. The second type of triangle we can have, also classified according to angle, is an acute triangle. It has acute angles in it, so it is an acute triangle. Remember, the right triangle does too, but it's that right angle in it that makes it a right triangle. The acute triangle only has acute angles in it. The other type we can classify it as is, because of this angle right here that's more than 90, we could call this triangle an obtuse triangle. Now, the important thing for us to remember is it does not matter what kind of triangle it is. If it's right, acute, or obtuse, all three angles will always add up to the exact same thing. The three angles in a triangle always add up to 180. Otherwise, it's not a triangle. Any triangle in the universe, I don't care where you go. The three angles in it will always add up to 180. And that's very useful in geometry and algebra and all of this. If we know some of the angles, we can figure out the other angles. So one thing you'll definitely want to remember is all three angles always add up to 180. We'll have a lot of problems where they give us a triangle, such as this one, and they label some of the angles for us and want us to find a missing one. If, for instance, they tell us that this is a 70-degree angle, and this is a 70-degree angle, they might want us to find this angle up here and just call it y. So if we know that all three angles add up to 180, we can easily figure out what y is, because y is going to equal 180 minus the other angles, 70 and 70. 70 plus 70 is 140. And so that means y has to be 40 degrees. Now, I know this, again, this triangle is badly drawn. I admit that, so please, no criticism on that, because I freely admit I am not an artist. But mathematically, this would be 70 degrees, and 40 degrees. Sometimes they may even give us a triangle like this, where they only tell us one of the angles, but they give us a couple little tick marks on the side. Those tick marks mean that those are equal sides. And one cool thing about triangles is whenever you have equal sides on a triangle, their opposite angles also have to be equal. So if these two sides are equal, these two angles are also equal. So if I see those tick marks and I know that's 70, I automatically know that is 70 as well. And just like we did over here, we can find that last angle is 40. By the way, this is another type of triangle. Up here we classified them according to angle. They can also be classified according to their sides. A triangle that has two equal sides, two equal length sides, like this one right here, is called an isosceles triangle. Isosceles means two equal sides. Sometimes the one I drew is more like what's called an equilateral triangle. It has three equal sides, which also means it has three equal angles. It's called an equiangular triangle. Equilateral triangle and an equiangular triangle are the exact same thing, because if it has equal sides, it will have equal angles also. There is another type classified according to side. If you have a triangle with three completely different sides, it's called a scalene triangle. So that's just a few definitions for you that you can know. But the important thing is, when we work with triangles, all three angles always add up to 180, and anytime you have equal sides, their opposite angles are also equal. We'll be using triangles a lot, not just in algebra, but in Algebra 2, in geometry, in trigonometry. Triangles they're going to be your friend or your worst enemy. It could go either way, really. But if you remember those few things about them, that's going to help out a lot. So if you need any help, hit me up in the comments. If I've earned it, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll try to get some new videos out soon.